Hi, so I thought it would be a pretty good idea now to talk about how I make my videos. This is a video that I might have been wanting to do for a long time, but I just didn't come around to it until this point. Anyway, of course this is not about some new ultra expensive 4K camera that I've got. In fact, I'm still using the same camera that my mom had in 2011, using just 4 gigabytes of storage in the SD card and a set of fairly simple to understand free and open source programs to make my videos and ultimately into a form that I can upload to YouTube. So without any further ado, let's have this video exactly about that topic. Of course, maybe this is not recommended for everyone, but like standard definition video is definitely enjoying a comeback at the moment. Plus this is the equipment that I have, so I do what I can do with what I have. For some other people this might be alright too. You know, if you have an old camera, don't throw it away, because even though the video itself can be of a lower quality than that of a more modern Red or RE, you can still make a pretty good quality YouTube video out of it. So, the first process of actually making a video is the ideation process. The generation of an idea in your head is a very complex psychological process per se, but at least to understand, to actually get a good idea can be quite simple for some people and quite complex for others. And there's an entire set of methods to determine what idea in your head, if you have multiple at the same time, is the best, and then work out the idea that you think is going to have the best results. But as I've heard from Tom Scott, don't think about success just as in popularity. Achieving what you wanted to do for a time, or you know, just working in a field or with a person that you like or admire, is in itself a good reward. So for instance, what I would actually do sometimes, because I run unscripted and can have a multitude of ideas passing through and through, is I would talk to myself, sometimes in a quite literal sense to an extent, and kind of process that idea in my mind before I actually put it into practice. Not just what kind of video I want to make, but what exact words I want to say and what format suits the idea the best. When you think of an old video camera, you might think of a device that has a CRT or a small CCD sensor to send video straight off to a tape of some kind. But I don't own a camera like that, or nor even a tapeless digital camcorder that uses flash memory. Instead, what I'm now using is effectively just a stills camera. And in fact, it's the stills camera that I learned photography on. The camera that I shoot my videos on, as I've told before, is not what you would actually even think of as a classic video camera. Those are purpose-built devices that have sensors that output video, and pretty much only video in some cases, they can't even take stills, to a tape or a flash memory of some kind that are specifically built around that purpose, to capture video. This isn't one of those. This is actually a stills camera that also has the ability to record video. Pretty much everyone except Kodak, for some reason, back in the 1990s and early 2000s, went onto the digital camera bandwagon. Those cameras could purely capture photos though, didn't have great video quality or video options at all, if they could even shoot video. For that, you were still intended to using film or tape. Until around the, I think, later 2000s, early 2010s, with introduction of things like MP4 and motion JPEG to the wider public, which allowed cameras like this one to appear that have both a pretty good picture taking capability and a limited full standard definition video capability. What I say unlimited, as in there's no arbitrary set limit on how long a single clip could be. The only real limit I have is the size of the SD card, which of course, as I said before, if you already have a camera like this, it's a good thing to get started on with YouTube. But if you genuinely want to make retro video and you're really looking for a what's called a digicam that can also record video, I have a couple of suggestions. First, a couple of warnings. These are going to be second-hand, so I'm going to have to give out some of these warnings. The first, if the seller that you're buying from is in a very remote area or wants you to wire the money internationally using something like Western Union or crypto, do not continue. You're probably dealing with a scammer who intends to be anonymous. I would say shipping per se is not a red flag. It's okay, you know, to ship something internationally via eBay. In which case you do have to be aware of the video output standard. So like NTSC or POUT are both supported in video mode. But if that is the case for your model of camera that you found, it's okay to have it shipped internationally. The second is something like this. A power supply or a battery charger. You must have one of those provided with your camera. For two reasons. The obvious one is that without this thing, you can't use your camera when the battery is depleted, or at least it would have to take very long to charge via USB cable. So, but it's not just convenience. If a battery charger or a power supply, or even the battery itself, isn't provided, it's tends to be either a sign that the camera is stolen and the seller never got the power supply or charger, or that the camera just plain doesn't work at all and it's a parts-only model. Unit. Don't fall for this. It's a great beginner's mistake. Another red flag is, well, if the camera has any kind of pixel problem. So like dead pixels or stuck pixels. A camera that has that kind of problem is damaged beyond pretty much all component level repair. You're going to have to replace the CCD or the screen, and that can get quite expensive. Much more so than just skipping the deal altogether and buying a different camera. And finally, a note about pricing. Digicams like this have become incredibly popular in the last couple of years, both with users and with scalpers who intend to make big buck off users and collectors who want to buy a camera. So if the price gets too high and you get like very professionally taken photos of the camera, don't buy it because it's a scalper. But on the other hand, something that's too good to be true, especially if they're using high quality photos from which are likely pulled from the internet without permission, it probably is too good to be true. But beyond those 4 red flags to be aware of, there are also a couple of green flags that can make a camera worth more in a genuine way. And one of those, well, firstly, is the ability to record video at all, especially at an unlimited amount of time per clip. Is very valuable for video use, of course. Another one is if the camera can take some kind of remote control. This is more often found in more professional cameras, and semi-professional ones might have this too. So yeah, as I use this camera, which doesn't have a remote jack, I have to reach out and press the button to actually start and stop recording. There are also 2 that this camera does have, and one of those is white balance adjustment, which is often done in post-processing. Having the adjustment right on the camera means that the photos or videos that you're going to take are going to have the look that you want right as you take them. And pretty much the exact same thing is true for color correction. This camera calls that My Colors, and that either provides a couple of presets or you can adjust these yourself based on your environment. So with that out of the way, let's just talk about this particular camera and how I get the footage off of it onto the computer. So firstly, let's talk a little bit about the camera and the tripod that I use. So it's the camera I made a shooting video about before, the Canon IXUS 970 IS. And it is quite a fun camera to work with for realty. Of course, this section is recorded on an iPad, but here we go. One of the interesting side notes of this camera is that you can set this button over here for multifunction for a number of options, like the teleconverter, face detection, compensation, or what I use it for, video recording. So the idea is that when I'm ready to record, well, first I have to put my camera on this simple little tripod right there on the screw mount. Then I just select manual, adjust white balance and color correction and lighting settings, and then just press this button to go to record, and that's it. Of course, this camera, when my mum bought it brand new, came with an installation CD which contains software that allows you to import your photos and videos very easily and perform some video editing. Unfortunately, that software has lost the time, but that's great because this camera uses a standard, and there are multiple video standards that cameras can use, especially second-hand ones, called Motion JPEG or MJPEG. The idea behind MJPEG is simple. It's just a bunch of JPEGs that are pasted into each other with some audio added on top in what's referred to as an AVI package. And that means that it is very easy for even a moderate quality computer or even the camera itself to edit. I'm going to talk about editing a little bit later in this video. Of course, if you want to use a camera for a location shot and you don't have access to a tripod or image stabilization feature for whatever reason, there's often a good chance that you can pretty smooth up the image using software image stabilization in your video editing program as well. So that's why I'm not focusing on any CDs that came with the camera. I'm just focusing on open source software that has a lot of features, is completely free to use, and of course, most importantly, allows you to make high quality videos, even out of relatively standard quality footage. Now, related to that is of course the lighting situation. Especially with these old cameras with their less sensitive sensors, it's important to be kind of careful with the lighting situation. Don't use too much light because you would oversaturate the sensor and get a hazy image. But don't use too little lighting either, because otherwise you would undersaturate the sensor and get a pretty dark image. Now what I've got here, just going to get up, is just a set of room lights over there. But just as important as the video itself is of course the audio that goes along with it. Now this camera has a built-in microphone. It is mono, but it is quite sensitive even compared to the image sensor. And I also talk a bit loud and clear in the microphone. So no overdubbing, there's no external microphone input. I'm just speaking clearly into the camera as it records what's going on. Unfortunately, this has the unfortunate side effect of sometimes allowing some secondary audio from things like emergency vehicles or some neighbours partying or something to come into the room and potentially even into the microphone in some circumstances. So I think I've got pretty much all the talking heads for this video. Let's switch back over to some live footage of using and editing the camera. Now, whenever I use the camera, just to close off on a screen, you can see over there it can create some lighting issues and potentially a moire pattern as well. There we go, I've got a close-up shot of the camera again. I press this button to go straight into editing and view mode. That also allows me to see the photos and videos that I've made up until this point, and now I can watch through every video to make sure that it's correct. Oh hi, so I thought it would be a pretty good idea now. So I'm going to go think here, so to one of the shots, if I know I missed the shot or it didn't go correctly, I can just hit this button. I'm just going to hit stop over here because I know if it's a good take or not, but if I knew this was a bad take, I can delete it this way, which is a good way of pre-edit. Besides the white balance and color correction, of course. So now, there's another thing in pre-editing that I can do, and that is the ability to cut parts of the video. So let's try that on this shot, where I know there's a bit of part where I didn't talk. So I'm going to be watching through. So for instance, what I would actually do sometimes, because I run unscripted and can have a multitude of ideas passing through and through, is I would talk to myself, sometimes in a quite literal sense to an extent, and kind of process that idea in my mind before I actually put it into practice. Not just what kind of video I want to make, but what exactly. Okay. I've just overcut a little bit and sense to an extent, and kind of process that idea in my mind before I actually put it into practice. Not just what kind of video I want to make, but what exact words I want to say, and what format suits the idea the best. Okay, I've just undercut a little bit. It's not very precise, and it often takes multiple takes to get to a suitable length. So I'm just going to continue on with these shots, and then I'm going to show you how I transfer these videos onto my computer in a convenient way in Linux, and then show you exactly how I use the Linux video editing program ShotCut, which is completely free and open source and quite easy to use, in order to actually make these shots and maybe some external footage as well into a final product. Okay, so I've got an update for you. The shot that I've used for the previous statements is now finished. I'm going to hit the save button. Obviously everything is in Dutch. And then I hit the overwrite button. I'm not going to make a new file, I'm going to overwrite the old one, so that this effectively becomes a kind of pre-editing technique. There we go. It says a little, don't touch anything sign. That's correct. So once I'm done recording the video, what I'm going to do is just plug in this little high-speed SD card reader to the computer, and I take the SD card out of the camera and plug it in there. So when I'm done and I plug the SD card into a computer, it's configured so that this program, Double Commander, automatically opens up. It's an incredibly powerful program for basic file management. It's available for Windows, Mac and Linux, the latter one of which I use at the moment. And where are you supposed to say Linux? Anyway, I'm going to select the THM files out, so only the AVI and JPEGs are being copied over. The idea is to get all the useful stuff quickly over into its own folder. So let's hit enter on that, and then that's basically just going to turn the original files here into a backup. So if something goes wrong on this side, I still have the files here, and thus I'm ready to go for an edit. Now of course, once I'm ready to go, what I'm going to do is do the video editing itself, which I do in the program ShotCut. Now again, free, open source, Linux, blah de blah de blah. I have a single strict template file that includes the intro and outro, which means that there's going to be a lot of files missing as I start up. So I'm going to click the OK button if that's the case, and then apparently the window sometimes gets a bit too large for some reason, so I'm going to maximize the screen size, then go here, click Ctrl A, deselect the intro and outro over there, and hit backspace, which automatically removes all the videos here. Now I'm going to remove the bad files here in the playlist as well. So that's the only thing that I don't intend to use, except for the intro, the outro, which I use to obfuscate a swear word, and which I use to indicate a card that indicates to another video. So let's click Open Files, and everything that was shot today, I'm just going to throw right in as assets. So once I'm done, of course, I noticed that here. Hi. So, and then I drag a component when I want to use it. I double click in the system, and then I drag it onto a track. Now you have to make these tracks first, and sometimes the interface just jumps over, and you have to park the asset in another track first. Now we can only see the video, but also the audio pattern. So here I notice a silence. I've got, in fact, and I'm going to ahead and realize that I've got the setting wrong for the playhead. So I'm going to go over here to timeline, and then to scrolling, and disable scrolling. Linkage with the head. I can still scroll this way, but no longer like that. Now I notice this, and I'm going to go and hit the split button to split the footage. And this can take quite a while, so eventually we end up with just the footage being cobbled together like that. Now sometimes a silence, like here, SD card, and a set of fairly simple to understand free and open source programs. I did it again. Fairly simple to understand free and open source programs to make my videos, and ultimately into a form that I can upload to YouTube. Now let's add in a text object in between two segments. What we're going to do is click New Generator, click Text, type the text we want to type, like that, and then click for simple or rich text. Simple text is just for something like a title card. Rich text I tend to use for overlays because it allows for more flexibility. So my absolute favourite fonts to use for this. Okay, congrats, I've just made a transition. Let's undo that. So transitions happen when I pull one video into another just enough for the two to overlap, which I've just done to here hide a hard cut. So let's have a look at the result. Like NTSC or POW are both supported in video mode. But if that is the case for your model off camera that you found, yep, I do try to avoid doing this, but let's actually try making a reference to another video for those who are interested.
Firstly, let's talk a little bit about the camera and the tripod that I use. So this is the camera. You may have seen the video about it before.
There we go.
Camera, you may have seen the video about it before. The camera.
Then we're going to add a card warning in rich text. This way, what I can do is I can edit that, and I'm going to use simple text now. So let's click VCREAS, which is my absolute favourite font to use in a video. I use it a lot in very complex ways in EAS scenarios, but I'm not talking about making one of those in ShotCut at the moment. Just going to go over making a video with this camera. So just moving this in the way, making sure that there's always at least one block between, or one track between two visual components, because otherwise I've experienced that they can get overwritten. So let's see what happens. Yep, it works.
Canon IXUS 970IF. And it is quite a fun camera to work with for realty. Of course, this section is recorded on an iPad, but here we go. One of the interesting side notes of this camera
So here is going to be where I'm going to start adding such an overlay as well. This time I'm going to use a photo just to show the moire pattern that you can get on an LCD screen with, well, with any kind of camera. So what I'm going to do is very carefully place the image on top of, well, the video that I've recorded based on that, and I'm going to corner it. Now I have done inverse cornering where you corner the video and have the image go out of that same corner, but now that I'm in the third video layer, so I shouldn't have any kind of problem, I'm going to make sure that it's as long as I want, and then I'll put this pointer there because I've got magnetic capture enabled, which means that as soon as it's there, it just captures it. Now I'm going to go to filters, size, position and rotate. I can use keyframes to reverse effect, but I'm just going to do it like this, and you should be able to see the moire pattern. Let's watch this part. You can see over there it can create some lighting issues and potentially a moire pattern as well. And now I can add another video next to that, ad infinitum until the entire video is all done. So next up, once I've got all the footage I need, whether that be Creative Commons or public domain images, the pictures and videos I take from my camera or my iPad or using simple screen recorder or whatever, all edited in place, what I'm going to do first is add in this outro. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It has a bit of a clipping problem though, so it's going to need to be filtered so that the audio isn't too loud. So I'm going to remove, I think it's from my outro, use about 18 decibel reduction for this. Then I'm going to go into the export button here. I'm not going to do that yet because I have a couple more remarks to make. But the first being that the exporting of a video by ShotCut automatically happens in a H.264 format, which is going to be good enough for YouTube. So, well, that is pretty much it, right? I hope you've enjoyed this video. Just 10 more minutes for this little section over here about some of my last remarks about this process. So once the video is completed and uploaded, obviously I have to make a thumbnail. Sometimes I forget doing this at all, but when I don't, I go through a very strict procedure in which I have a single template with my logo and a text object on it, as well as a small background and of course an image. Now I delete the old image and adding a new one. This can be something from OpenVerse, which is Creative Commons or public domain, a frame from my video, or just a photo I took for the thumbnail. I put that in, put it on the desired layer and export. I used to export as PNG, but I'm now going for a web picture instead because they tend to be a bit smaller and more optimized for YouTube thumbnails, for instance. They download as WebP as well. Another side note that I'm going to make in this one take is that another side note again is that of my intro and my outro. So the intro, I've actually used some music from the old ZDF Heute Journal and other TV intros in the past, and it worked fine because nobody really cared about those. There are a lot of people who straight up upload full TV idents to YouTube per se for my enjoyment, and yours truly, I probably maybe as well. And they don't have any claims, so I decided that's a good way to go. But it just felt a bit wrong to do that in a video that I wanted to license Creative Commons. And I just had a bit of spare time. So what I did was I tried to remake a variation of that intro in GarageBand. Of course, I had my own things a little bit as well, but it's going to be very recognisable at the beginning of this video and future ones as well. Now, as for the outro, again, it's a bit of copyrighted music from old television that nobody cares about, and in fact, I voiced over. That voiceover had a bit of a clipping problem, so when I add the outro, I have to do a reduction of volume level to about 18 point something decibels, and on top the graphics are just incredibly simple, made using ShotCut, and there's just a square and some text around it, and that square is where I would put the latest video that I made, and I also put a circle somewhere for people to click on to subscribe. I thought it could be a good idea eventually to completely redo the outro graphics, remake another musical track for that, and redo the voiceover without the clipping problem. But the Westlife once told to me in a video about a similar thing that apparently YouTube might eventually start removing the end screens feature by default.
And it seems like YouTube is considering phasing out end screens. They recently announced that they are testing the ability for viewers to hide end screens, giving you more control over your viewing experience. Yeah, at least for now, until they probably end up making end screens hidden for everyone.
So maybe I won't really be able to do that at all before they cut the end screens by default, so they no longer count. That is that for today, truly. So see you another time. Bye bye. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do, please give a thumbs up and share this video with all your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.